Reddeos presents r/AskReddit. If you enjoy the video, show your support by commenting, liking and subscribing to the channel. When did your gut feeling of something's not right here save you? Worked as a shot girl at a pub. One night I rejected someone who attempted to get my number. Not unusual, and he didn't seem that bothered. The whole exchange wasn't strange to me. In the early hours after the bar closed, I went to leave through the back door into the car park like usual when I saw the sensor light outside was on. Someone was stood just outside the door. I felt uneasy, so went out the front and asked one of the bouncers to walk me round the back to my car. As we rounded the corner, we spotted this guy lurking outside the door holding his belt like a makeshift garrote. When he saw us, he started screaming that I was and I should die. He scampered off into the road and never came back. Someone came into my work that gave me the I'm in danger feeling. I work in a place where 60% of my customers are children, and I naturally get very protective of them, but you can't call the police because someone's creeping you out. He kept getting close to children but not doing anything or even making them uncomfortable, so there still wasn't anything I could do. He leaves and I shrug it off. Another customer soon comes in and gives me the same feeling, so I'm thinking I'm just anxious today. He's talking about Donkey Kong and stuff, casual conversation. Then he says I'm best friends with Martin Bryant, the spree killer from the 1996 Port Arthur massacre, who is in solitary confinement and can't even interact with whoever has to throw his food at him, so I'm getting a bit nervous now. Then the first creepy guy comes in, and the one I was talking to says I know him, we went to prison together. So immediately I start having a panic attack and have to end the conversation as quick as possible so I can contact the manager to say I need someone else to come into the store. I was there alone, and they immediately call the police. Turns out they were both registered offenders. Neither were allowed anywhere near my work because it's too close to the CBD, and they're legally now allowed near anywhere that could have children there. I actually recently went to court for this, waited hours to go in, and he pleaded guilty at the very last second. Edit, I offered way too many details and now I'm super uncomfortable with everyone guessing where I work. I've had terrible experiences with people finding out where I work and I'm a bit spooked. I woke up at 3 a.m. once sitting upright in bed. I felt on alert and my heart raced when I saw that my cat was on alert too, wide awake by my feet with his ears perked up. But I didn't see or hear anything weird. Something didn't feel right and I couldn't relax. So I got up and went to the kitchen. Turned on some lights and ate food even though I wasn't that hungry. Eventually went back to bed. We discovered the next morning that someone had stopped while in the process of using some kind of tool to silently cut a big hole in the glass window in the living room. They were trying to break in. Right next to the bedroom. I think the lights I turned on scared them away. Edited to add that we had 3 long years of issues with our neighbors. They repeatedly came into our property and were that we put up a 9-foot fence to keep them out. This attempted break-in happened right after the fence went up and 2 days before they all moved out. Glad those pieces are long gone. Went to a college party and one of the guys made me feel very uncomfortable. He didn't ever do anything to me, but something seemed off. I kept dumping my shots because getting smashed seemed like a bad idea. I ended up taking a friend and leaving while he told us that we were being lame by not having more of the Grey Goose. He raped another girl at the party that night. I'm a firefighter. We got called out to a tree fire started by fallen power lines. We pull up in the truck and I'm trusting that my driver and crew leader are doing their job and have good situational awareness. We get out of the truck and we've parked next to a set of power lines, not fallen. It's a very windy night and I can see the lines swinging, so I voice my concerns to my crew leader who says it'll be fine. We get out, hose out, risk of the tree fire catching onto a house outweighing potential risk of arcing plus the line disconnected when it fell, and I'm on the branch ready to start putting it out with 2 others near me when I get a chill. I look up, see the line swinging violently and yell everyone move. As the 3 of us sprint and dive out of the way, we hear a thwip and crack, and sure enough the line we were under came loose and stayed connected to the power pole. If I hadn't got that chill, chances are we would have had 3 fried fireys. Had a friend who said we should go to this party he was invited to by a classmate of his. We ended driving out to it. We noticed the neighborhood was not too pleasant and sketchy. We saw that house had some lights on in backyard but kind of quiet for a party. I decided that we should not go since something felt really off. Friend ended finding the classmate that invited him got robbed and threatened when he went to party. It ended up being a fake party. When I was in middle school and around 14 years old, I was returning home. I live like 5 minutes away from said school and I noticed there was a man following me. He wasn't looking at me, he was looking at his phone and he wore a cap so I wasn't able to see his face fully. Anyways, he gave off this weird vibe. I reached my apartment building and the guy was still behind me. I know mostly everyone who lives in my neighborhood and I couldn't recall him. Last moment I decided I wasn't going to go inside the hallway. I turned around and went to a store where I waited for my mom to come. A few weeks after, there was some news about an 11-year-old girl from my school who was raped in the building right behind mine 2 days after the incident. The guy they caught looked a lot like the guy who had followed me, and given the time frame and the proximity, there's a high chance that it was him. My daughter was 1.5 years at the time. She had a cold, but bedtime went off without a hitch. I woke up in the middle of the night that night, really uncomfortable and anxious. Something was off and I couldn't put my finger on it. I got up, had a midnight snack, tried to calm my nerves. I decided to check on my kids, who shared a room, before trying to go back to sleep. I get in there and immediately I hear a light sound coming from her crib, wheezing. It was so quiet, there was no way to hear it outside of the room. I got her up and saw that her breathing was fast and labeled. I took her to the hospital, where she ended up with an overnight stay, oxygen, and nebulizer treatments because her oxygen had dipped. She was diagnosed with reactive airway disease due to the cold, which triggered the asthma attack. Not me, but when my mum was a teenager on the 18th of November, 1987, she was going to London to visit a friend. It was around 7:20 p.m. and she decided she was going to take a taxi instead of going by tube because it didn't feel right. King's Cross Tube Station. 10 minutes later the whole station caught on fire and 30 out of the 40 people died. If she had decided to take the tube, she would likely have died. At age 5 I was almost abducted by strangers at the park who had a bunch of toys on a blanket and tried to lure me into their motorhome. I looked back to my dad, who was talking to his friend maybe 100 yards away. I got a tummy ache when one of them tried to coax me by reaching for my arm to lead me away, and I screamed and ran like back to my dad. Years later I found out those same people had abducted other kids who weren't so lucky. Never ignored a gut feeling since. Thanks for all the positive feedback. And FYI, trust me, once my dad got over the shock he let me have it for not only wandering off but speaking to complete strangers. I talked to my mom a bit about it today and she told me my dad broke down and blamed himself. Positive outlook on this though guys, this is just one instance, scary as it may be, where my gut led me in the right direction and my instinct for danger is now uncanny. I truly believe everything happens for a reason. I trusted my instincts and it kept me safe, still does. Well, I was walking home. Wasn't late and I'm from a pretty safe area, but it was that time of year when it starts to get dark really early, so felt kind of ominous. Anyway, I pass this guy in a red sweater and red tracksuit bottoms and he looks at me funny. Maybe he's high, maybe he's way something not quite right about him. I keep going. Look behind me, he's still there. Cross the road. He crosses with me. As soon as I turn a corner I sprint to my apartment complex and run into the coded gate and wait. He rocks up a minute later and stares at me through the gate. He just stares at me for a good 10 or so seconds, then runs back the way he came. Shivers. Posted this: my 2 babies to an in-home daycare run by a lovely woman. About 9 days in, the woman's teenage son was home when I picked up my kids. He gave me a super creepy vibe. Pulled the kids from the daycare and placed them elsewhere. Maybe 10 years later that kid murdered 2 people then killed his mom. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment, like and subscribe.